So are you ready to PR yourself? We'll remove the mystery from all things PR, and we'll discuss everything from our top strategies to tips and tricks and everything that you can utilize to further enhance your brand or your message. I've been in media, I'm a journalist, and I'm also a publicist. I am Leah Frazier, CEO of Think3 Media, and your host for PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. Let's go. And welcome back to another episode of PR Yourself with Leah Frazier. I am your host, Leah Frazier, CEO of Think3 Media, the media maven out in Dallas, Texas. And I am here to drop by, and this is a very random episode. As you guys can tell, it's been a while since we've published an episode, and I just made a commitment to myself that I wanted to provide you all with valuable content. So I'm only going to publish when I have something to say, or whether there's an interview on topics that we haven't necessarily covered before. I even put out in the private Facebook group for PR Yourself with Leah Frazier, things that you guys want to hear, because I want to make this experience as valuable as possible. So if you're not a part of that Facebook group, I've included a link in the show notes. Come join us. I'm going to be doing some more lives, giving away some freebies. I'm gearing up for some workshops and things of that nature to help equip you guys with even more information. So you're definitely going to want to join that group. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for rocking with me. It has been a whirlwind. For anybody that knows me personally, I just got engaged last December. My fiance lives in South Africa. And this has just been, it was unexpected, us finding each other. I think I talked about it in a previous episode on how we met in Bali and everything. So I'm in the midst of wedding planning, trying to get everybody from the US to Johannesburg and Cape Town. So it is going to be an experience. We're trying to get married December of 2025. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for that date. So if you haven't heard from me in a while, just know that life is totally lifing right now. And I'm just, it's going to another level. Finally found my mate, and someone who could deal with all of my crazy. So when we get back from this word from one of our sponsors, we're going to be talking today about media advisories and media alerts. For those of my fellow publicists and PR professionals, we know exactly about these and what they are and how they're different from press releases and when and why we need to use them. But for the everyday small business owner, entrepreneur, I recently had to advise a client on why we were going to do an advisory versus a press release for a press conference that they had coming up. It's really important to know the two. And I realized that when people are talking about DIY PR, or maybe you're following other PR professionals who do something similarly to what I'm doing with my podcast here, this is one of the areas that's often neglected. We talk a lot about press releases, how to write them, what should be in them. But when it comes to media alerts and advisories, this is a topic that I don't often see. So I'm going to discuss it today. That way you're not out here shooting yourself in the foot. Why didn't they open my email? Why didn't I hear back from them? Because I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. All right. So stay tuned. You're going to hear a word from Kitcaster, one of my favorite sponsors. And then as soon as we get back from that, we're going to jump into media advisories and media alerts. You are definitely going to want to have your pen or pencil out for this, or an iPad if we're going to 2024 into this current century, or go ahead and take that out, because you're going to want to take tons of notes, and you're going to want to listen to the end, because I do have a very, very, very special free offer for you that will help you in this realm. So you definitely want to keep it locked in. All right. Hit you back up right after the break.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Welcome back. All right. We're talking today about media advisories versus press releases. Okay. So I'm a person, before I get here on this podcast, I want to check myself because I've been doing this for a while. And so I want to make sure that I'm giving you the right definitions. I want to make sure that the advice that I'm giving, and I will underline advice because there's other PR firms, agencies, and professionals who may do things differently, but I like to see that as somewhat synonymous across the board. So before I came on today, I decided to see what are the technical definitions for press release and what is the technical definition for media advisory. And so I came across Canada's Newswire website, and I like the way they explained everything. So let's talk about this. So a press release, which we've talked about a million times, is a long form marketing tool used to create noise about newsworthy information. The key phrase here is long form. Typically within your press release, it's very detailed. It's very factual. You're hitting every nook and cranny because you're really trying to tell that story of the news that you're releasing to journalists, news anchors, news sites, news sources, whatever. So that key word, as I will highlight again, is long form. Okay. For some of you long-winded people, which I tell you to keep it succinct, and some of you don't do it, but this is going to be the press release is going to be where you pour your heart out about your event, about your product launch, about whatever newsworthy information you believe that you have. Okay. So let's transition. What exactly is a media advisory? Now, sometimes you'll hear this interchangeably called a media alert. I really don't give a crap what you call it. Okay. But we're going to call it, for purposes of today, we'll call it a media advisory. Okay. So a media advisory is not, and I repeat, is not a press release. It is essentially an alert or notification that you're sending out to your news sources. Typically, media advisories are going to be an invitation for an upcoming event. Just recently, I sent out an advisory because we had an emergency press conference here in Dallas, and I needed to make sure that all of the news outlets, the journalists, the writers, whoever, some of our news bloggers were able to attend and publicize the event that day. Okay. As I said, I'm here on this Newswire site, and they're even saying that media advisories, you can use for product launches, award ceremonies, grand openings, socials, charity, environmental drives, workshops, and even musical performances. Okay. So, but the difference is that your media alert is short, sweet, and to the point. I want you to think about back in school when you first learned about who, what, where, when, and why. You're hitting all the W's and you're making it so succinct. They only need to know who is this, who's organizing this. It would be you, your brand, your company, whatever. What is this about? No longer than 2 or 3 sentences, maybe 4 if it's something completely like breaking news and you really have to explain it. So who, what, where is this being held? Where is this event? Where should the media show up? Even in this where section, you're going to want to put parking instructions. So if you're downtown and typically there's a meter, or you're not going to have a special space coned off for news stations or media folks to access the building or the location that you're in, you're going to need to put parking instructions there. You're going to have the time in there. What time should they show up? Generally, this is not the time the event starts. Generally, your media arrives a little bit earlier. So because especially if it's something where it's heavy news related and you've invited a lot of the news stations out, you've got to give the camera guy time to roll all the equipment. Typically they have all of their equipment in a wagon. They've got to set up the camera. They've got to test the audio. They've got to mic somebody up, or typically if it's a press conference or some sort of junket, some of them, oftentimes the news stations will all have their mics on one stand. It just kind of depends on how you set it up, but you've got to give them time to set up. So their arrival time is not going to be the time of the exact start time of your event. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier. Okay. So you want your who, what, where, when, which is your time. And you can even put your why. Why is this important that they attend and write about this event or help you to publicize this event? Okay. That is a media alert. Very short, simple, and to the point. So just as an example, so you can kind of get where I'm going with all of this, the other day I had someone reach out. It was an organization. They were doing an emergency press conference about some conditions here in Dallas that are highly newsworthy. It involved a ton of organizations, and they were like, Leah, we need your help. And the first thing the individual on the phone told me was, hey, do you want me to send the press release we put together and send it over? And I was like, yeah, sure. Send it over. I already knew in my head I probably wasn't going to use it. But they took so much time. I felt bad. I was like, yeah, go ahead and send it over. And honestly, just like a journalist would do, I use the press release and I will take the meatiest parts out of it that I know is going to be compelling for the news outlet. So that's less work for me. So yes, please send the press release. But I already knew in my head I wasn't sending that out. And I'll tell you why. For this particular incident, as I was talking with the client, I realized that what they were setting up for this press conference was going to be what I would determine to be breaking news. Because it affected a lot of individuals within Dallas County, from our officials to our constituents. There were allegations being made that were going to be revealed to the news and the media for the very first time. So this was going to be a situation where maybe the foundation or the crux of the press conference and some of the issues have been covered before, but some of the things that we were going to be revealing at this press conference was a first ever. And so that to me would have been well, maybe not breaking news, but it would have been a very newsworthy situation. So they don't have time for press releases. I'm sending you something where I'm like, I need your butt to show up. And the best way for me to do that was through a media advisory that sent it as an invitation. But in that subject line, as I'm sending it out, lets them know that this is an emergency press conference, because I believe they hired me on a Tuesday, or we had our first initial call on a Tuesday. And I told them the press conference was going to be on a Sunday, which was a whole nother animal, because on the weekends, I know at least here in Dallas, our news stations are our news stations and a lot of the press and media outlets are very short staffed. So it's like, crap, you just cut off two of my feet right here. Because now it's going to be even harder to get somebody to show up, to the location, because you're doing it on a weekend and it's not even a Saturday. You're doing it on a Sunday. So heaven help me, please. So they told me this on a Tuesday. I didn't get all the information as far as who was going to be speaking and all of the logistics until I asked them to send it to me by Thursday night so I could send out the alert first thing Friday morning. Also knowing that the staff was going to change, so I would have to send it again Saturday morning and then make phone calls to the news desk as well. But of course, with most clients, I didn't get the information until Friday afternoon. So I had to hurry up and create the emergency alert, which I probably should have had it pre-done, but I was at a conference in Atlanta and I just didn't have the time. So during one of the sessions at the conference, I created the emergency alert. And one of the key areas, this is the part you're going to want to write down, that I generally focus on when I'm creating these alerts, is the subject headline or the subject of the email. So this is being sent via email. And it either has invitation, depending on what I'm trying to invite all the media out for. But in this situation, it was in all caps, emergency press release, semicolon or colon, sorry, Dallas County officials, blah, 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 blah. So the whole time I'm crafting the subject line, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I spend the majority of my time on that subject line because that is the determining factor whether they're going to open my email or not and send it off to the correct party that I need to show up for this press conference. If that subject headline or if that subject is not compelling enough, or you're not making it like this is the most important news site or event that you have to show up for on that day, it's deleted. Or they open it, they put it in the news folder, but it is not a priority because you didn't make it like it needed to be a priority. So again, this was emergency press conference. I knew that this needed to be publicized by all the outlets. So my subject line in all caps was emergency press conference, : And it's like, okay, let's open it and see, why is this an emergency? Okay, so that gets it open. Once they open the media alert, I get straight to it. I don't, my mom used to say pussyfoot around. I don't know where that originated from, but I don't pussyfoot around. I get straight to it. So in that alert, I hit my who, what, where, when, why. I give them all the information. When I'm talking about the what, I'm really getting to the meat of why this is either breaking news, why this is newsworthy, why your station or your outlet has to be there, why this is essential for news coverage. And again, that's one of the sections I spend a ton of time on. Because then they're determining, should we go to this event or should we go to the other event that we got a media advisory or media alert on? You have to understand that when you're sending stuff off to the news station, you're not the only one. There's probably hundreds that come in that day. So you really have to take the steps necessary to stand out. So during this media advisory, again, it's very short. It hits the who, what, where, when, and why. I always put in bold the important parts. So in particular, using this example, we had a list of 7 or 8 speakers. When I ordered the speakers in the media alert, I put the names that were most recognizable up top. So we had several community leaders that were going to be speaking at this event who are always in the news for the things that they do in the Dallas community. I put their names first and I put it in bold. That way, when they open it, it's like, oh crap, if he's involved and she's involved and he's involved, then that means something's going on and this is a big deal. So again, you have to be very strategic, even though this is not a press release. It's shorter, it's easier to do, it's faster to send out, but you still have to be intentional and you still have to use strategy. Okay. Let's see. I told you kind of what goes in it. Your strategy, it must be compelling. So that's pretty much it. I'm looking here at the website for Newswire just to make sure that I've hit everything. I think I have. Again, your media alert is to lure reporters to attend your event. Oh, and there's different kinds. Okay. So this one that I'm giving you the example for was for a press conference. We were calling a press conference over a very important issue that affected the city of Dallas. Okay. So that's what the media advisory and the alert was sent for. I'm all about consistency and I'm all about the follow-up. So whereas with a press release, I'll send it out. I'll maybe wait 4 or 5 days before I follow up with a journalist or whoever I've sent it out for. With a media alert, especially if it's a short amount of time from when I'm sending it and I need you to show up, I send it out every single day. So when I sent it out that Friday, in the subject line, it said Sunday, and I think there was a dash, emergency press conference, : Dallas County officials, blah, 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 blah. The next day, when I sent it on Saturday, I changed the subject line. I sent it every single day. And I'll tell you why here in a second. That subject line changed to, in all caps, tomorrow, : tomorrow, dash, emergency press conference, : Dallas County officials, blah, 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 blah. I sent it again, Sunday morning. Then it changed to today, all caps, today, dash, emergency press conference, blah, 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 blah. As it progressively got later in the week, I sent it high priority because now I'm really letting you know that this is emergency and I need you to be there. Okay. So just in answering that, now I don't do that with press releases. I'm not trying to send it every single day with my media alerts. I do as it gets closer to the event. So for example, if you're doing a media alert for an event or a media advisory for an event, you may want to send it a week out. And then as you get closer to the event, just to rack up any outlets you haven't heard from, you may want to send it 3 days out, 2 days out, 1 day, and then the day of. And I promise you, especially with your news stations, they're not getting irritated by this. And if they are, they let you know. But I've never had anybody tell me to stop doing that. And the reason is, like I said, sometimes there's different people at the news desk when they receive it. Generally, when you send it through like news tips or whatever they have on their website or through their website, or you're sending it to the news assignment email address that the news station has, they'll put it in an assignment folder. Somebody will go through it during one of their meetings to determine then whether it's an event that the news station actually wants to send someone out to. Now, I send it every day up until the event at a certain point because I'm banking on the fact that maybe someone overlooked it. Maybe someone didn't understand how big of a deal this is. Or maybe it's in the news folder and by chance, if they were sending their crew out to an event, maybe that event got canceled and they can send them to my event. Let me remind you that we want your coverage. So I end up sending mine at least 2 or 3 days out from the event and doing it every single day. And generally, especially in this situation, we ended up getting every outlet, every news outlet in the city out there to the press conference, in addition to our newspapers, our digital outlets, magazines, and things of that nature. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a bonus. I know you're like, oh my God, this is so much information. Okay, so in a bonus, actually, I'm going to backtrack. What types of events or what types of advisories are you sending out? Like I said, this whole episode has been about a press conference as an example. So you would send a media advisory for that. I've sent media advisories just for my clients' events. So if it's a nonprofit and we're doing a fundraiser that has maybe, a celebrity component to it, or maybe it's one of the biggest fundraisers in the city, or we're trying to raise a substantial amount of money, I'll send a media advisory for that because, of course, we want the media and press there in order to cover the event, to let the community know what we're doing. So you definitely can do a media advisory for an event, and it's the same thing. Send it out. It's very short, sweet, simple, to the point. Send it as an invitation. Know what time you want them to show up. Tell them why you want them there and why it's important. And then leading up to the event, normally in my case, I do it 3 or 4 days out, and I send it out every single day, even the day of the event, just to catch any stragglers who may have not opened their email or they may not have seen it, to get as much media as possible to the event. Another type of media advisory media alert that I send out often is a red carpet alert. So if it's an event where we have a red carpet, where we're having, maybe it's members of the organization, or there's a celebrity component and we have celebrities showing up at a specific time that I know the media would want to speak with or interview, then I send a media alert specifically for red carpet coverage. Okay, you can invite them to stay afterwards. And normally, typically, I know in Dallas, this would be for a gala or for an event of that nature. But you have to think in terms of the journalist, or if it's a photojournalist, or if it's a reporter that they've sent out. Sometimes they're going from event to event to event to event. So they're not going to stay the entire 3-4 hours for your event. Okay. So you have to pick and choose what you want them to show up at. And generally speaking, if it's an event where you have a red carpet, they're going to come and line up on that carpet to get their interviews. Some reporters, some journalists will actually stay after the event and attend. But if they've got to go back to the news station to put the package together to run on the news that night, they're not going to be staying for your event. So you have to be very, very specific with red carpet coverage, what time you want them to show up or how early they can get set up on the carpet, where they're going to be on the carpet. So they'll get that when they arrive. And then after you give them the red carpet information, also detailing to them when those specific celebrities or when those specific individuals are going to be hitting the carpet. That way they can maximize their time. They know like, okay, so-and-so celebrity is hitting at 5:30 and the last celebrity that I want to interview is hitting at around 6. And then they know that they can pack everything up, get to their next event or go back to the station to get the news segment ready to air later that night or the following morning. That is how that is done. Okay. So those are several examples of media advisories or media alerts. Again, very short, simple, and to the point. Lastly, and the one thing I failed to mention that I do want to emphasize is that within the media advisory, I always include a caveat just in case the media really wants to be there, but they just can't come. Like I said, you have to consider that they are stretched very thin. Some of them often low staff, depending on where your event falls within the week. So if it's the weekend or whatever. And I always include a section that says, look, if you can't be there, just let me know. We will have photos, images. I'll send out a recap of the event to you, as well as B-roll, which is just video that you're taking at the event. Oftentimes they'll use it without sound or do their own voiceovers over your video. And that can be taken with a phone. So there's absolutely no excuse to get the media the information that they need so that they're able to do their job. So, in this last press conference, I actually did have a news station that asked for the recap of the event. Look, I need to know what happened. So of course I included some quotes. We had enough video for them to use. They did their own voiceover on top of the video and they were able to do a segment from that. So you're really giving them all the tools that they need to either show up in person. And if they can't show up in person, you're saying, hey, I get it. Let us film and get the photography and get you everything you need so that you can still run a story without feeling the pressure of actually having to be there. So I always want to emphasize that really it is our job to make it easier on our news partners to tell the story of your brand, or in my case, my client's brand, and look at us as a resource rather than as a burden or working with someone who's not trying to actually make their jobs easier. So again, include that caveat. If you go to the show notes and click on the link and access your free media advisories, you will see in the press conference one, particularly where I've included that language, and you're free to use it as well. And how can I forget? I've given you all this information, and I'm sure the question you're asking yourself is, okay, Leah, that's great. We've got a media advisory together. We've done everything that you've said to do. How do I send this sucker out? It's very simple. If you don't have contacts with news producers, with the editors, with reporters or writers, I highly suggest, especially for TV news stations, just going ahead and sending it through their website. Most of them have a contact form on the Contact Us page, or they'll have the email address for news tips. So I highly suggest sending it to those places. You can't fail. Like I said, once you send it to those, through those mediums, it goes to the news assignment editor, who then decides to put it in the news folder and where it needs to go from that point. But if you've done everything you're supposed to do, you've labeled it correctly, you've identified the who, what, where, when, and all of that information, you should be fine. Another thing that you can do, which never hurts, is you can also follow up a couple hours later or maybe the morning after, calling the news desk. The number again is on the website, and just asking if they received your media advisory or alert. And they'll tell you right then at that moment if they've received it, if they put it in the news folder, or where it is in the process. So that is my advice for you. And that is how you will send it out. It's very easy peasy. And I don't want you to worry that you don't have the contacts, because if you have the valuable information, or what you're doing is newsworthy or at least compelling enough to attract the media to your event or to your press conference or to your red carpet, that is enough. Okay. You can send it through the general contact form on the site, and they will get it to where it needs to be because they're interested in your event. And then as you get a little bit further along in this DIY PR process, you will start racking up the contacts so you know exactly which producer to send it to without having to go the long way around. But everybody can do this, not just publicists, PR firms, or agencies, okay? I thought I had something else I want to tell you guys, but I guess I do not. That is it. I wanted to be able to talk to you all about that because I feel like the mistake is not knowing when to send it. And some of you guys send out press releases, which are way too long. And you've got to remember that a lot of your journalists, your news anchors, and your editors and those guys, they get way too many emails as it is. They don't have the time to read through what you're sending them. So the shorter you can keep something, the more succinct you can keep it and just get straight to the point with them, the better. Okay. So using this to your advantage for an event or a place where you want all of the news stations, the writers, everybody to show up to cover your event is the move, is the strategy for you. So I hope that helps. Again, in this situation, I advised my client against the press release. We went with a media alert and it turned out phenomenally. And that's when I got the idea like, hey, I got to tell the PR yourself crew about this. So if you have any questions, you know exactly what to do. You can go ahead and shoot me an email personally, Leah, Leah, at think, Think, 3, Three, media, media.com. I want to thank you so much to tuning in. Again, just to remind you, we do have a private Facebook group, PR Yourself with Leah Frazier, where I time to time drop hints and tips and tricks. And sometimes I'll get some amazing news opportunities or amazing interview opportunities, and I'll drop that into the group. I offer that to you guys first. So please hit up the show notes. Click that link and join our private Facebook group. Also, today I'm going to extend an offer. I am feeling very generous and I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain things via audio on this podcast from time to time. So what I've done is I've taken my latest media alerts, and including this one that I was talking about, in this podcast episode, and I have moved them over from email format into a Google Doc. And I've given you 3 types of media advisories, one being for an emergency press conference. And it doesn't have to be an emergency. It could just be a regular press conference. I've also given you a media advisory for an event. And then I've also given you a media advisory for a red carpet coverage for media, for you to see an example. I have removed information as far as the client is concerned, or at least that's not so telling, but it's there to provide you with an example. Okay. So go ahead. That is also included in the show notes. So click that link and then get access to your free offer of media advisories. And again, it is there to show you an example. Hell, I don't care if you copy it over and use the exact same format for yourself. That's what it's there for. So giving away some freebies today. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, hit me up. But I'm going to be dropping some more episodes for you guys as time carries on. But you know what to do. Keep it locked in. Share this episode if it's helped you out. Share it to another entrepreneur or small business owner. And we'll see you again. But until next time.